Well, hello, my fellow nerd and nerdettes. Welcome back to another episode of the Nerd Corner. I am your host, Philip, and today's video we are going to be discussing probably one of the most popular movies of 2024. And before you say it, no, we are not talking about Dune. We've already talked about Dune Part 1 and Part 2, so if you want to listen to that episode again, just go back in the catalog and find it. We are going to be talking about Wicked. That's right. Before you say anything, you're probably like, Philip, well, I thought you weren't really into like musicals and plays and all that. Um, and to be honest, I really am not. Musicals and just plays aren't my thing. I would go see one with somebody. Like if I had the option to see one with somebody, I definitely would. I wouldn't go by myself. But this Thanksgiving in 2024, we had the premiere of the Wicked movie alongside Gladiator 2, which I just did a review on the previous episode. So if you haven't watched that yet, I am going to kind of put it in like the top left or top right corner for you guys to check out, obviously. But yeah, those came out the same weekend around Thanksgiving, and let me tell you, I might post the video on YouTube, like in shorts, just to show you like what the mess and the disaster was like, with the garbage and the cardboard, when it came to Wicked, and I think I still get some PTSD honestly sometimes when I hear the end of this movie because it just reminds me of like the fact that like I have to clean this theater, um, and yeah, it was intense. It was definitely an intense time to be working at the movies. I mean, it was great pay. I mean, obviously you were getting a ton of hours, but um yeah, it was definitely a lot. And I didn't think I was gonna see this movie, right? Like, I was like, oh, you know what? I was like, I don't really like musicals, whatever. But my mom wanted to see it. So I was like, you know what, while I'm up in New York, I was like, why don't we, we'll go see it. And to be completely honest, I was actually pleasantly surprised at how much I actually enjoyed this movie. I mean, I love The Wizard of Oz. I mean, it's such a classic movie. So talking about all the lore and, just this franchise as a whole, I loved it. It's not like I have all the Funko Pops and the movie posters and I'm like totally obsessed with it, but it comes on TV, it's a nice enjoyable watch, right? I've actually never seen The Wicked play in person. So that is unfortunately an honor I do not have. I've heard nothing but great things about it on Broadway and everywhere else, obviously. The two actresses that actually play Elphaba and Galinda in the musical were actually in this movie temporarily, which I thought was like a pretty cool homage to the musical. Obviously, I would love to see the musical one day, but I just have not. Um, so yeah, this was kind of like me going in blind almost, when it comes to Wicked. Not really knowing much about the film. Like I'm kind of looking at this from like a movie standpoint, right? Like, is this like a prequel to The Wizard of Oz? Is this like canon? Is this like another timeline? I think what I've been told, this is kind of like a solo story. So I don't know if like Wicked is kind of considered like a prequel to The Wizard of Oz. Like this is actually what happened behind the scenes, or if this is like a whole new take on like the Wicked Witch, of the West, and her origin story and stuff like that. I'm not sure. Um, but nonetheless, like I said, I went in and I really enjoyed it. Actually, I would love to actually go see it again, before it leaves theaters. So if I have the opportunity, I might go. If not, I'll probably be watching it as soon as it comes out on streaming or whatever. Um, so yeah, so we're gonna, so I'm gonna bring you guys an episode of that today. So like I said, if you haven't checked out the previous episode, I just covered Gladiator 2, which also came out around the same time. Obviously, not as impressive, box office wise, score wise, as Wicked. But comparing the two side by side, Gladiator 2 definitely did hold its own because I don't think these movies really fed off each other. Gladiator 2 is a whole different genre of film compared to Wicked, right? So they were each able to kind of get their flowers, make their money, and get the ratings that they deserved. So if you haven't checked out Gladiator 2 and my review on it, please go check back on the catalog and give that a watch. But today, like I said, we are going to be covering Wicked. So obviously, like we do on all these movie reviews, we're going to start with some basic knowledge. We're going to look at the box office report, we're going to look at the cast, we're going to look at the ratings before we kind of get into the pros and cons of this film, and then ultimately my score of what I would give this, like, out of 10. Um, so I think because it's Wicked, we'll do out of flying monkeys. So we'll see what I rate this film out of flying monkeys. So let's go over the cast first, right? Let's see who was in this film, actor and actress wise. Kind of give them their flowers, and give credit where credit is due, right? So we have Cynthia Erivo as Elphaba. We have Ariana Grande as Galinda. We have Jeff Goldblum as the Wonderful Wizard of Oz. We have Michelle Yeoh as Madame Morbilet. We have Jonathan Bailey as Fiero. And then we have Ethan Slater as Bach, as well as Marissa Bode as Nessa Rose. I guess one final shout out is that we do have Peter Dinklage as Dr. Dillamond. Obviously, there are a lot more actresses and actors in this film, but those are really some of the names to highlight, as they were obviously seen the most in the film. So kind of just, I'm curious to see what happens if I click on this. So we do see that it was actually nominated for a bunch of awards. Obviously, the award show hasn't come out yet or anything, but we do see that it does have a ton of nominees for the Academy Awards. We're looking at Best Achievement in Costume Design, Best Achievement in Film Editing, Best Achievement in Makeup and Hairstyle, Music Written, Production Design, Visual Effects, Best Motion Picture of the Year, Best Performance by an Actress in a Lead Role, Best Performance by an Actress in a what does that say? In a supporting role, as well as Best Sound. So we do see that Wicked is possibly going to be a very heavy hitter, probably alongside Dune, with the Academy Awards this year, which doesn't surprise me in the slightest. Um, After going over the cast and crew and just some of the award nominees, we're going to look at the scores. Now I don't know. I'll try to see if I can find more of the scores from some of the other franchises. I mean, I just kind of saw one from Rotten Tomatoes, but I'm trying to find it from like Metacritics and stuff like that. But for now, we'll just kind of look at Rotten Tomatoes, right? Because that's kind of like the bread and butter of this podcast. And obviously, you know our tendered history when it comes to Rotten Tomatoes. So we're going to see that it's actually a verified hot popcorn meter at about 95% for an audience score. That is absolutely fantastic. I mean, that is something you definitely want to see when it comes to not only a musical movie, because, again, movies that, are musicals are kind of hit or miss. But again, seeing that, I mean, this is 5% away from 100%, right? So, there's 5% of people out there that did not like this film. That's saying a lot, especially with how much money this film has made and probably how many people have gone to see this film. So we see that the audience score is at a 95%, which is fantastic. Certified hot, right? Awesome. The critic score is also very high as well. We do have a certified fresh at an 88%. So overall, we see that these scores are like almost in the 90s, which is very good to see. Just kind of looking at, basically the quick, audience and critic consensus. The critics all agree that Defying Gravity, with its magical pairing of Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande, Wicked's sheer bravado and charm make for an irresistible invitation to Oz. I think that's a great way to sum it up. That's basically the consensus of all the critics. I mean, obviously, we could sit here and read all of them, but we're not going to. Overall, the audience say that they should fly, not run, to see Wicked, and it's a bewitching musical experience chanted by a spellbinding cast. So overall, the critics and the audience are in agreement, where basically, they are both saying that, hey, you need to go out and see this film because it is definitely worth your while. And funny enough, it looks like the critics and the audience agreed, and that's exactly what they did. So at the time of this recording, on February 3rd, Wicked in the box office has grossed about 718.04 million United States dollars. So, it is, almost towards $1 billion. I don't think it's going to hit $1 million, to be honest. I mean, we could look to see what it has hit worldwide. I mean, this might just be domestically in the United States. But let us see. Excuse me, I got a little bit of a hiccup right there. Okay, yeah. So we see that. I mean, not only did it blow its budget out of the water, the budget for this film was $150 million, right? So it's made that back like 7 times over. Okay. We got a report here saying about $719.2 million. So it looks like, unfortunately, it is not going to break a billion. I wouldn't have been surprised if it broke a billion, but we're seeing that, compared to, I think, Gladiator 2, which kind of sat at like 600 and something million. This definitely made a little bit more. But again, kind of comparing the two, like they didn't really take away from each other because they still made, a decent amount of money for both films. Uh, Looking at IMDb, we see that they actually have it rated at a 7.7 out of 10, which is still a fairly good score, kind of like that 8 out of 10 rating almost. So definitely a good score from IMDb as well. But yeah, we do see that overall it did make about $718 million, which is obviously fantastic. It's one of the highest grossing non-sequels ever at a domestic box office. Which is absolutely fantastic. We see that it is coming closer to beating Frozen 2 and becoming the 25th highest grossing film ever, which is fantastic. Wicked worldwide box office apparently was less than $4 million away from surpassing Dune Part 2, which again just kind of speaks for itself, which is absolutely phenomenal. We see articles here that Wicked just broke 10 box office records. So again, we're just kind of giving this film its flowers. But obviously, it is actually now in one of the 50 highest grossing movies of all time. That is absolutely fantastic. I mean, that is exactly the reception that you want for a film like this. So overall, looking at the cast and crew, looking at the scores, and looking at the box office report, obviously, all these films basically literally flew with flying colors. So yeah, I mean that is absolutely fantastic. Now that we got kind of like the bread and butter out of the way, we're gonna look at some more like the meat and potatoes, right? We're gonna see what kind of makes this film good, what makes this film a little bad. I think a lot of these cons are gonna be like taken with a grain of salt. These are just cons that you know I would look at, like, if this film didn't come out yet, I'd be like, oh well, this is what people are expecting, or this is what people aren't expecting, right? So we're gonna look at some of the cons, okay? So obviously one of the cons is high expectations. So obviously fans of the musical have high expectations, and any deviation might disappoint diehard fans. This is obviously a common concern with just really any franchise, whether it's a musical or just a franchise like Marvel, Star Wars, DC, etc. Obviously, fans are going to have their own expectations, and if their expectations aren't met, it could obviously sour that particular fan's comparison with the film, obviously. Um, Again, I think because of the audience score, looking at how it was about 95%, I think most of these expectations were met and they were probably superseded by fans. So I think something like this, you kind of take with a grain of salt, right? I don't really think this is a pretty bad con. You never know. There could be a really diehard Wicked fan out there that nitpicked everything about this film and, they didn't like it. But overall, I think these scores for the audience kind of spoke for themselves. And I mean, I don't think we need to worry about these high expectations, to be honest. Um, Something that kind of piggybacks off of that is that we're going to be looking at comparisons to the musical, right? So there will be inevitably be comparisons to the original stage performance, which could lead to criticism. Obviously, this is true. We know that the film Wicked did actually add some more scenes than the musical. We know that the Wicked film that came out is only part one, so it wasn't the entire musical. So there is going to be a part two of this film. So they didn't finish the story in this movie. But just kind of like going off the back of high expectations, we are going to have people going in and be like, oh, well, this wasn't in the musical. This wasn't in the musical. They did this. They did that. Like there are going to be people comparing it. Whether or not that's more of a con or that takes away from the movie, that's just kind of up to the audience member. Again, I mean, looking at the 95% score for the audience, it looks like even though there probably were some comparisons to the musical, they were probably good comparisons, or like it just didn't really impact their viewing experience in such a drastic way where like it inhibited their scores, right? So again, we're taking these cons with a grain of salt. We're going to look at the third one, which is obviously adaptation challenges. These are all kind of going back to back with each other. So obviously, translating a live stage performance to film could be tricky, and some elements might not work as well on screen. Obviously, we've seen some other musicals that have tried to adapt into movies, and unfortunately, they haven't done very well. I think Cats is one of the best example. But we do see that there have been other movies that have had some moderate success, and of course, this was probably on people's minds before going in and seeing the movie. But again, after seeing the movie and looking at all the scores, we see that this wasn't as big of an issue as people thought it was going to be. So, I'm sure there were some people that maybe wish things were done a little bit differently, but overall, not so much where like it impacted their performance and their personal opinion of the movie. Um, the last 2 points we're going to cover here, we're going to cover first our pacing issues. So condensing a lengthy musical into a standard movie runtime might lead to pacing problems or the exclusion of beloved scenes. Now, this is true, but Wicked did something smart where they're doing a part one and part two. So instead of trying to fit the whole musical into one movie, they split it into two, which obviously was the correct move. And it's not like you have to wait like a couple of years for the second part of Wicked to come out, because it's coming out next year around the same time. So November 2025 of this year, we're getting Wicked Part 2. So fans don't have to wait too long, and I mean, they made the right choice when splitting it into two movies. That way they can go at their own pace, and you don't have to worry about these pacing issues. Finally, we do have some casting controversies. So obviously, some cast decisions could sometimes polarize fans, leading to debates and criticisms before the movie even premieres. I mean, this is going to be like in really any movie that comes out, to be completely honest. It's not going to be something. Uh, Excuse me 1 second. Sorry, I actually have to take this. Hello? Okay, I do believe that I have a counseling appointment at that time at 11 o'clock. So I'll be on the phone with my therapist when she calls. Is there any way to push it back? Hi. Yeah, that works out fine. Okay, thank you. No, no problem. Okay, you too. Bye. Okay, sorry about that, guys. Usually I would just let it go to voicemail, but unfortunately it was important, so I had to take that. Um, So where were we? Yeah, so obviously there are going to be some casting controversies. I mean, that's going to be found in all films, to be completely honest. People are always going to have their preferences of what actors and actresses they want to be seen. Obviously, I know there was some controversy with the actress that played Elphaba, Cynthia Erivo, before the film when it came to some sort of like poster that people were kind of making for the movie. Obviously, she got a little bit upset about that, which I'm sure soured some people's opinions. But overall, I think her performance in the film definitely made people come back around. And I think both Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo, they did an amazing job as Galindia and Alphaba. And I don't really think there's any controversy to be talked about them, to be honest. I mean, they both gave a wonderful performance. So I know it was a little touch and go before it came out, like a little slight PR issue. But I mean, other than that, I mean, I think this movie and its cast blew everybody out of the water. So I don't think anybody's had anything bad to say about any of these characters. So again, a lot of these cons, we're taking with a grain of salt. They're basically just things that you look for in a movie anyway. All these cons that I talked about, we look at for like every movie, right? So we looked at it for like Gladiator 2, we're gonna be looking at it for like every other movie that's gonna come out, right? But looking at the cons specifically in this one makes a little bit more sense, because obviously this is a musical adapting into a live film versus just a movie coming out, right? So now that we went over the cons, we're going to talk about some of the pros. So obviously, one of the first pros is that we're going to have some beloved source material. So the musical has an enormous fan base, and the movie adaptation will likely draw from its rich story and iconic songs. I mean, this is just kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? This is just kind of expected, I mean, obviously, when people heard Wicked the movie, they were just like, "Oh my god!" Like, you're gonna get everybody that loves Wizard of Oz. You're gonna get everybody that loves Wicked the musical. So it's like you combine those two fan bases together, and obviously you're gonna have a huge line of people that are waiting to see this movie. And that's exactly what happened. Having sold out theater after theater after theater, even to this day, Wicked has been put into the smaller theaters because it is on its way out. But those showings still fill up with people. So it just goes to show that like people are just still loving this movie after almost being out for about 2 months now, like 2.5 months, which is crazy. Another pro we have is a star-studded cast, so kind of how I just talked about before. So the cast includes some heavy hitters from the entertainment world, potentially bringing great performances. Again, Jeff Goldblum, the actress that plays the Madam, Peter Dinklage, Cynthia Erivo, Ariana Grande, all great actors and actresses. So obviously having that cast and crew together is going to make for a phenomenal film, and it did. Um, Another pro we have are some visual effects. So obviously the high budget production often means spectacular visuals, perfect for bringing the magical world of Oz to life. Compared to like some movies that did have what somewhat of like a smaller budget of only like $150 million, so the fact that they were able to pull that off with just that amount of money and then make it back 7 times over is extremely impressive. And the film looked beautiful. I mean, it was colorful when it needed to be. Any CGI or animation, I think, was done spectacularly. And because it's more of like a movie based on a musical, you don't really have to worry about those like oohs and ahs and flashes. So any visual effects that they did were pretty good. They were phenomenal. So we also have expanding the universe, right? So this is another pro. So a movie adaptation can delve deeper into the lore and expand on the characters' backstories. Again, because this was a musical and they adapted it to a movie, obviously you're gonna have some things that are added to the movie that weren't in the musical. So this could like lead to obviously deeper lore and the expansion of characters if you're adding more plots and more storylines that weren't in the musical, which people might enjoy, and it seems like they did, obviously. And then finally, we also have the new audience. So obviously, the film has the potential to reach those who haven't seen the stage musical, thus growing the fan base. Obviously, this is me as an example. Never seen the stage musical. Wasn't really interested in seeing it anyway. Now that I've seen the film, I would actually be surprised, like curious to go watch the musical and see what is similar and what's not similar. So I definitely fall into this category wholeheartedly. And yeah, I mean, I'm not just speaking for me. There are going to be people that all across the world that have not seen this musical, and because they saw the movie, now they want to. So again, you just have a broader, expanding audience for not only Wicked but the Wizard of Oz franchise as well. Um, and that is basically going to be it, guys. That's basically all the pros and cons that I have seen, and that other people have seen, obviously, about the film Wicked. So now that we've kind of gone through all of it, and we've kind of had our meal, right? What am I going to give this film out of 10? So I think I'm going to give this film probably just a solid 10 out of 10. Flying Monkeys. I mean, this film was absolutely phenomenal. There wasn't really anything that I saw personally that would bump it down from a 10 out of 10. I think the pacing, the characters, the cast, just, from beginning to end, I think this film was phenomenal. And if you haven't gone to see it yet, I highly recommend going to see it while it's still in theaters. I mean, you've had so much time to see it, but if you have not seen it yet, definitely go see it in theaters. You will not be disappointed. And then when it comes out on streaming, definitely give it a watch because it is absolutely phenomenal. Um, but with that being said, guys, that is going to do it for me today from the Nerd Corner, discussing the film Wicked, and just be on the lookout because we do have a couple more reviews for the month of February going into March. We still have to cover movies such as Mufasa, Craven the Hunter, and then there are also some shows that I want to cover as well, such as the Skeleton Crew. And then there is a new Marvel show out currently called Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, that I think I'm going to do a review for after it finishes wrapping up. But yeah, like I said, just if you want to know where you can find this lovely podcast and myself, we are currently on. If you wonder why I say we, it's just because I tend to refer to myself in the third person, because not only do I communicate with myself but also you guys. So I kind of have all of us into like one big collective. So, if you want to know where you can find the Nerd Corner and, our family, we are on Instagram as well as TikTok at the Nerd Corner, and then we are also on YouTube at the Nerd Corner. So follow us on there. Turn those notifications on. I usually post on those platforms when a episode has come out, and then like I said, you could either watch me live as I'm recording now, or you could just listen to my voice, as I talk about the movies. But yeah, again, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, all under the Nerd Corner. That's where you can find me and this lovely podcast. Please be on the lookout for this episode and all the other episodes that I plan on doing. Like I said, just follow us there, turn the notifications on, and yeah, I just really hope you guys enjoyed these discussions and these little reviews. But with that being said, please go check out the Gladiator 2 review that I did before this. And whenever I see you guys again, I hope you have a great start to February, the month of love. Hold your loved ones close, and your friends even closer. Please be safe. Do not do anything stupid. Whenever you listen to this, have a great morning, afternoon, and a great evening. And I will see you all in the next one. Goodbye for now.